Good morning and welcome to the morning show here at Bethlehem Church. I'm your host, Craig Work. I am so excited to be joined by my dear friend, Brother Alex Jeter, this morning. He is going to be sharing his testimony with us today. And folks, let me tell you something. You better pack you a lunch because it is out of this world what God has done and is doing in Brother Jeter's life. And I'm just going to tell you, Brother Jeter, I'm excited, bro. I can't wait to see what all God has in store through your testimony on how He's going to impact so many people's lives. And bro, I mean, God has just done some amazing things.
He has.
And, you know, we sit back a lot of times and we see a lot of different people be healed, go through, you know, get deliverance and so many different things. And we think, wow, you know, that's just awesome. But when it's you, it's just like, oh, wow, you know, He will do it for me too. And you have seen that. And bro, I'm just glad to just to know you, man. And to know that God is not only working in people that we hear about, but He's working through us.
Yep.
And that's awesome. So awesome.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes,
really
sir. Yes,
this
sir.
means a lot to me.
It is. It's our cameraman has done got a little tickled on us, I believe. He's trying to keep control of himself back there, but that's all right because we're human. We're human, and we actually when we sat down and when we told them, said, "All right, boys, get your snacks out of your wrappers so you ain't undoing your wrappers and stuff." So they tickled at me right now because they're not expecting me to say all this. But go ahead and get it out of your systems, boys. But anyhow, Brother Jeter, I don't want to get in the way too much. Tell me something. Tell me a little bit about your backstory before you get into your testimony. Was you raised in church?
Yes, I was. I was born and raised in Pentecostal belief. My dad has been pastoring for probably 20 plus years now of my life. I'll be 30 this year. You know, grew up in the truth. And even before it, my dad was a pastor, you know, he was a preacher.
Right.
So I was always, you know, under the pews, at the pews when I was growing up as a child. Been around North Mississippi my whole life, so I know a lot of people around this area. I've heard a lot of great men of God.
Right.
I'm a fifth generation apostolic.
Wow. Awesome.
On both sides of my family, my mom and my dad's side. And that means a lot to me too.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, so I'm, you know, this is what I believe. And I try to share it with anybody I can.
Right.
Anybody I run into, if a door opens, I try to walk through it.
Right. Roots run deep, huh?
It does.
Yeah, that's cool. My family goes way back. My roots run deep in apostolic too, and I'm so thankful for that heritage. You know, I got away from church at one time in my life, and you know, I want to think that all of those prayers, all of those, you know, sacrifices that were made throughout my heritage is part of the reason why God kept me, you know, because they say that there will be treasures laid up in heaven, you know.
That's right.
And I want to think that like my grandmother, my great-grandparents, so on and so forth, you know, a lot of those things that they done. And I think it's important for us today to realize that we're living in those promises that they were given then.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's really awesome to see that. I love to see the first generation apostolic, but I love to see the fifth and sixth and seventh generation apostolic because it works. It shows that, hey, it works.
Yeah, it's sustainable. It's not just a thing. It's not a fling.
It's not
it's real.
Right. It's not here today and something different tomorrow. It will keep you.
That's right.
And you and I both, you know, me, I was delivered from drugs. You've been healed from infirmities, which we'll get into here in a little bit. And it's just, I can't help but think that some of those prayers that my grandmother and your grandmother prayed are some of the prayers that are being answered right now. You know, they may not be here to see them,
Right.
but they're being answered.
Yep.
And it just goes to show you that your prayers never die.
They never die.
So I don't want to take up a whole lot of time. Tell me, let's get into your testimony, and I might step in and ask you a question here and there, but if you want to, just start sharing a little bit about it if you want to, or as much as you want.
Yeah. So, you know, my testimony, my story pretty much starts back in 2003. I was about 8 years old, second grade, and just like your average normal kid, you know, wild, doing whatever, just living life. I had a good family. Obviously, as I spoke, you know, I was being raised in church, so I had good principles and a foundation, and everything was going smoothly. And then one Friday night, we were out at a family event. I believe it was like a wedding anniversary party for my aunt, my great aunt and great uncle. And we were at the restaurant, and all of a sudden my side began to have like a sharp pain in it. And it, you know, it was kind of gradual. It wasn't anything too serious at the moment. And as a kid, you know, I'm playing, I'm eating, cutting up with other kids, so I'm kind of ignoring it, kind of just not paying attention. And not long after, maybe 5 minutes later, it began to become overwhelming, where I couldn't really function. And so I remember, you know, telling my mom and dad I didn't feel good, and they let me have the keys to the car. I went out there, unlocked the car, and got in the trunk of the car. We were in a minivan. I crawled into the very trunk and just curled up in a ball. I couldn't function.
Right.
And didn't know what was going on, you know, and it felt like hours. I'm sure it was 10 minutes later, my parents came out there. We were getting ready to go home. So we get in our seats and we're driving home. And we only lived maybe 10 minutes from town. And we come up on our road, and I'm still in pain. It's agonizing. And my dad stops the car in the middle of the road, and it was at our turn at the intersection where the highway and our road to our house is. You could see our house from the highway. And he stops the car, and he turns around, and he looks at me, and he says, "Do I need to take you to the hospital?" And most kids, I know no kid wants to go to the hospital. But something in me told me I need to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I told Dad yes. And so we were already facing the direction to head toward Oxford. So he drives me to Oxford, about 25 minutes, and go to the Oxford ER. They admit me that initially they believe I was having an appendicitis attack. Thought my appendix was rupturing, and that was what's causing that pain. And began to do some tests, and turns out my appendix was fine. And so ordered some scans. They began to do some scans and quickly realized it was a little more serious, more than they could really handle. My kidney at the time was about 3 times the size of a normal kidney of an 8-year-old. It began swelling up. They weren't sure what was causing it at the time, so they ordered for us to go to Jackson, Mississippi. So here we are in Oxford. It's probably midnight on a Friday night. Now we're being told we have to rush to Jackson, Mississippi, which is 3 hours away. So, of course, we go. I get down to the children's hospital. They admit me and run some tests. They have to rush me into emergency surgery. And I spent the next week there in Jackson, Mississippi. The next day or two after the surgery, the doctors came in, and I remember them coming in and talking to my parents and talking to me, and they looked at us and said, if you had not come that night, if you had not come the night you came, you wouldn't have made it through the night.
Wow.
The doctor was saying it was that bad, the kidney was going to shut down, and that's also when they discovered I only had one kidney. So up until then, we had no knowledge that I only had one.
Just an average kid.
Right. So even if, you can survive with one kidney, you might feel pain, but it's not fatal because you always have the other. For me, that's why it was that much more serious, because I didn't have the other one to fall back on or to lean on. So found out I had one kidney. That one kidney now is severely damaged, and changed my life. I mean, it changed my life forever. I went from a 8-year-old kid eating whatever I want to eat, drink whatever I want to drink, sodas, to now I pretty much have to drink water.
Right.
which is tough on an 8-year-old.
Sure.
But when you live through it, you realize how serious it is, and it doesn't make it that hard. But
Right.
just some changes in my my lifestyle. But that was when it all began. Like I said, I was about 8 years old, 2003. Between then and 2022, not much really happened. My kidney function, we just had to, have regular checkups with a doctor.
Right.
Keeping an eye on it. Had to keep my blood pressure under control, take medication for that. And, about October of 2022, that's when this most recent occurrence happened. I was at work one day, and just like back then, started feeling a sharp pain in my side. And it was, started out feeling like a pulled muscle, something just every time I move, it would hurt a little bit. I was like I pulled a muscle. But then it started just being consistent. No matter what I was doing, sitting still, breathing, it was hurting. So I called my wife, told her I'm going to have to go to the ER. And I crawled down to my truck, barely got in my truck, and drove myself to the ER in New Albany this time. Get there, they run some tests, and they believe that I had passed a kidney stone. They believe I had a kidney stone. I passed it. Now it's in my bladder. They call them bladder stones at that point. And so then they told me I need to see a urologist, which is basically a doctor that looks at, bladders and the urinary system. And then they also advised me to start seeing a more regular nephrologist, which is a kidney doctor. Up till this point, I had been seeing a nephrologist about once a year. And every time I went, it was fine. Never made a big deal, so I thought everything was fine. And in my mind, I always, at a young age, when all that happened when I was 8, they told me one day I'd probably have to have a transplant. But, as a kid growing up, I always felt fine. You don't see it, you don't feel it, it feels fine. So in my mind, I'm thinking I'll be an old man when it affects me.
Sure.
You're thinking, when I'm 50, 60, maybe, and that's normal. And then I also, growing up, think about, medicine's advancing so fast, so far. Maybe they'll have something by then. So I'd kind of lulled myself into this idea that it wasn't going to be anytime soon. So I had no idea this was coming. Well, I scheduled an appointment with that nephrologist. She's in Tupelo. First appointment, she runs my numbers on my kidney. And first thing she comes in is, okay, well, we need to get you signed up to do a kidney transplant. And it shook me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was scary. I always knew I would probably have to have one, but I didn't think it would be now.
Right.
And it felt like the worst possible time. We had just had Wes. He was only like a year old. My wife wasn't working at the time. And so I was the only form of income for us. And so it was stressful, scary. But so fast forward, I ended up having the surgery with the urologist to have the bladder stones removed. But then when they go in, there were no bladder stones. There were no stones at all. And so, interesting. So I didn't really have to see the urologist much anymore after that. And I believe that all that probably happened to get me to the nephrologist.
Sure.
Because my kidney function was low. They basically measure kidney function in percentage. And mine had gotten down to 18%. 15% is when you start dialysis.
Yeah.
I believe back when my kidney was damaged, it was up in the 50s and the 60s. So it was way lower.
Right.
And so I think had I not had that pain, had I not gone and seen all that, been referred to the nephrologist, I may have not gotten to somebody to even put me on alert that my kidney was in trouble. So I think maybe God was moving in that as well.
Yeah, no doubt.
But so she, nephrologist tells me, need to get on the list, sign up with you. She told me I could go to UAB. We also have Jackson, Mississippi, where I went when I was a young child. they do transplants. They're the closest hospitals that do transplants. I apply for both. UAB ended up accepting me quicker. Go through their process. It's an extensive process. Kidney transplants, they go through all the precautions so that rejection doesn't happen. So they have to test me and make sure everything that they're looking for to matches up perfectly.
Sure.
So from there, I began to realize, if I needed to get a donor, I was going to have to kind of go public with my situation.
Right.
And I'm pretty private.
Sure.
I'm a quiet guy. Try to keep things to myself. I don't know. Just don't draw a lot of attention.
Right. Right.
And but I knew I would increase my chances if I did that. So that was October 2022, end of the year. Beginning of 2023, I decided to put a post on Facebook. And put a post on Facebook just kind of briefly describing my story and what was going on and what, I would have to do and what I needed. And just said, if anybody wants to look into it, here's the information, and it'd be greatly appreciated, basically. That post got 200-something shares, 150 likes, 100 comments. There's no telling how many people it reached that actually up and actually went and got tested.
Right.
There were people I didn't even know randomly that were probably connected to people that I was connected to. Just good people that just wanted to offer their help. And all this experience, it really opened my eyes to, we hear about the, people in the world and the communities, especially during that time. This was a couple of years ago, and we had riots. We had things going on.
It was tough.
It just seemed like everybody in the world was evil. And that kind of opened my eyes to there's still a lot of good. There's still a lot of good in the world. And so fast forward a little bit further, a couple weeks later, they started announcing it at church here at Bethlehem, and several people started communicating with me about it. The first person being Zach. So
Brother Zach Dunlap.
Zach Dunlap. So Brother Zach, he pulled me into a room. He was the first person to talk to me, and I hope he's okay with me sharing this. But he kept it private, very respectful, and just told me, he had prayed about it and felt like he needed to do it, and was asking me everything he needed, what information he needed. And he was just the first of many.
Sure.
But it meant a lot to me.
Right.
It was that part was, I've always, like me and you were speaking earlier, I've always had a church family.
Sure.
I've never really truly needed them for more than just prayer and things like that. This was where I could really say I really needed some people in my life. And, I know we're all biased, but Bethlehem Church, we have a great church family.
We do.
And I had only been
blessed.
Another thing, that I had only been coming to Bethlehem for 2 or 3 years at this time.
Right.
So it's not like I'm deep rooted in Bethlehem Church. Zach had only known me for a year or so.
Right.
But it just really opened my eyes to that, and just the importance, the critical need of having a church family when life throws things like this towards you. I tend to be a kind of a control person. I like to keep things in my control, which is another thing I learned in this situation, because I had no control.
None.
I call it extreme ownership.
Yeah.
And it's something that when I take ownership of something, my health, my body, my actions, I own it. I take responsibility. And I also have issues with delegation, all those things. But that was something that when I started realizing I had to open up, I'm going to have to lean on some other people. Right. It's not just something I can do by myself. And then after doing that, getting the response that I had.
I think a lot of that comes with just being a man in general, though. Just,
Yeah.
you know, having pride and not wanting to humble yourself and say, hey, I need someone's help.
Yes. Yes. It's terribly hard for me. And some people I've seen that, you know, I'm one that might be hard for me to ask for prayer.
Sure.
It sounds weird to
I'm
say.
okay. Let me help you.
Yeah, it sounds weird to say. It
is.
sounds like if I'm praying for it, it's fine. I got
That's right.
You ain't got,
Yeah.
you know, but anyway, so those are just things I've learned through the experience, and the importance of a church family.
Oh, absolutely.
We talk about forsake not the assembly of ourselves. It's not just it is for worship.
It is.
But it's for the things like this.
It's for your lowest moments, too.
It is. So, you know, it kind of reminds me of when the disciples are on the water and they're in the boat and they get shaky. Well, they had each other.
That's right.
When Jesus had not stepped out on the water yet, they still had each other to lean on.
Right.
I couldn't imagine being out in this world in a boat.
Oh, man, it would be, I mean, like I have like been out in the world before, but I still had the church.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
To run home to. And I can remember when I was out in the world and when things would get bad, you know, I always wanted to flee back home to the church. You know, it was more than just going back home to mom and dad's. It was always home was the church.
Yes.
So I can't imagine what that would be like without having the church family.
I don't know how people do it. I really don't. And that's coming from somebody who is almost tries to be not a burden for anybody.
Right.
But that was just something that was major that through this experience so far, you know, that really changed my mindset about a church family. It's more than that.
Right.
So, you know, as we spoke earlier, I had several people go through the process, and it's not an easy process to even get tested to be a match. And rightfully so, because if it's not right, you know, we want it to be thorough. And so I did appreciate that, but it's just not something simple.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no telling. I don't have a number of the people that got tested.
That's amazing.
I know it's several, probably more than I could count. And people I may never know them.
Right.
They still tried. But then one day you approached me. All right. And I don't know how many people know that, but you approached me and you told me you'd been praying about it. And you said, you know, I feel like God's calling me to get tested for it. Don't know if anything will come of it, you know, but I feel like it. And I said, okay. And I said, here's all you got to do. Just like anybody else had asked me, because I wasn't trying to pressure anybody. I said, here you go if you want to do it. And I don't know if you do or not. Nobody tells me.
Yeah.
I don't get results. I just can give you the information.
Right.
And then you can take with it as you want. And I don't know whether you did it or not.
Yeah.
So you had gone through the testing and ended up
Was a match.
being my match.
Yeah.
First match. And there's so many things that opened up my mind too.
Yeah.
Because just thinking about your story.
Yeah.
And you can talk about that. What led up to,
Sure.
because it's impacted my life greatly. I can never explain.
Let me tell you what's even wild about that is not only was I a match, but my wife was a match as well.
Yes.
So like both of us are looking at each other like, okay, which one who's going to do it now?
Yeah.
You know, and of course, me being a guy, you know, I'm like, well, let me do it. I should be the one to do it.
Right.
And I wasn't wanting to rob her of her blessing too, because she felt called to the need as well. And, we prayed about it, and we decided together, that it was me, that I would be the one to go through it. We both went to Birmingham, and we were there early that morning and left late that night. And when you said they put you through it, they put us through it.
They do.
They did.
They don't make it easy.
Yeah. I knew when I left after a few days after I left there, I was good. Completely. They checked me from head to toe.
Yeah, you know how you are standing on your health.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yes.
And it was it was a humbling experience for us. For me, and I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, but for me, I was dealing with fear of like, was you okay with me? You know what I mean? With accepting a kidney from me. Mm-hmm. And I think my wife's like, why are you so worried about that? I was like, well, just because of my drug abuse in my life that I dealt with, would he even consider, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's people, I guess the thought of, or the fear of people thinks that, well, you know what I mean? He's not clean. He's not, mm-hmm. he's done drugs so I learned through that not only, through all that extensive testing, not only did God clean my life up, but he cleaned my life out.
Yes.
And like, I've actually told this story before in a rehab, not your side, but just my side of, going through the testing and learning that I could be eligible, because you had to be so many days, so many weeks, so many years, whatever, from your last use of drugs. And dude, like when I was down to like days. I only qualified by days. Yeah. And I knew then, I was like, this is a God thing.
Exactly.
This is 100% a God thing. God knew 5 years ago, yes, when I was in drug treatment, trying to get clean, that you were fixing to go through your situation. He needed, exactly. You know what I mean? And we don't want to put that much emphasis on stuff sometimes, but it's God. God is preparing us now for something later.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was saying. It's like master orchestrated.
We can't do that.
No. And for everything to line up the way for you to get, like I said, I wasn't from here either.
Right.
I married my wife. We moved here, started going to church here in 2020.
Right.
So only a year before this happened. 2 years.
Sure.
So it's not like I was just here and you were just here and we were here all along, and it's just,
right.
We were.
Well, I tell you, when I got the news, my wife and I were talking about it, and we had prayed about it, and I told her, I said, it's almost like a conviction to find out if I can help. It's just kind of what it felt like it just would not leave me alone. You know how you get convicted over something, and you have to deal with it before that conviction leaves you? That's what it was like. So I have a cousin that done something similar, but he done part of his liver. And I called him and I said, what did it make you feel like? How did you know that you were supposed to do? He said, Craig, it was almost like I was convicted to at least try. I was like, you ain't got to say nothing else. You don't got to say nothing else. Yeah. That's all I needed to hear.
Yeah.
So that was it. And I mean, hey, here we are.
Yeah. And so, when that happened, because I don't even know what the odds would be.
Yeah,
chances
sure.
Are. And it probably depends on how many people get tested. But to find a match, and the really important thing to know about finding a donor is that when I went to UAB, they put me on a list for a donor.
Right.
And I could have gotten what they call a cadaver kidney, which is somebody who is passed away, and they have listed as an organ donor.
Sure.
Those kidneys have a higher rejection rate, mm-hmm, and they also have a lower lifespan rate.
Right.
So they won't last as long. So kidney from a living donor,
right,
is way lower rejection rate, way longer lifespan.
Yeah.
So that's even more. So it's like, it was just a really big moment, and it took a lot of. You talked about fear. Took a lot of stress off of me.
Sure.
Because I had talked about, my family and how we were set up at the time. And so, and I went through different stages, okay? When this first happened, I probably went through every stage of grief twice.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so I definitely don't want to sit up here and act like I wasn't scared.
Yeah.
That I didn't question God.
Right.
That I didn't have any of these things. Mm-hmm. It shook me. And I thought I was pretty good. I thought I was pretty strong.
Sure.
But like you said earlier, it's when it's someone else, we tend to have all the faith in the world. When it's ourselves, that's when you need other people.
Absolutely.
Sometimes people may not, but I'm that person. I know now I need other people.
Right.
But I went through all the stages. I went through, I'm going to be healed. God's got this. I believe, high level of faith, to, I don't know, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? If he don't heal me, I'll be okay.
Right.
It's okay. He's done so much for me.
Just a roller coaster of emotion.
Yeah, he's done so much for me that if he don't, I'm still trusting in
Right.
him. I go through that. You go through them all. And it could be weekly, it could be daily. I could go to sleep positive and wake up. It was chaotic in my mind. And if you ask most people, you may not have seen it, and I may have been good at hiding it.
Right.
But telling you now, it greatly affected me.
Absolutely. I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's, and so, and I'm hoping as I'm speaking that if anybody's watching this,
Sure.
that it may not be stage 4 kidney failure, it could be cancer, it could be anything.
Right.
But bottom line, it's something that I could not control. I still can't control. I ask the doctors every time, is there anything I can do?
Right.
Can I get healthier? Can I take certain medications? Can I do, I said, other than prayer, because that's what I'm doing. We're going to do that. But is there anything I can do? And they said, no, it's an acute issue, meaning it's just happened, and we just have to play it out.
Right.
There's no getting better. And that was the thing. And that's where the next part, when I start talking, is why it's important. That there's nothing I could have done. There's nothing I did or could have done to make any changes, other than pray, of course.
Right.
So, 2023, we have tent revival.
Yeah.
And
It's really hard to believe that it's been that long ago.
yeah,
I mean, like, we're in 2025 and you start talking 22, 23, and like all this stuff seems like it just happened.
yeah, I know.
But
This is before Rosie was born. And that was another thing, I remember thinking, like, I remember having a conversation. This is before Rosie. Wes was 1. And I remember riding down the road, and it was one of those days where I was on the down and not on the up. And I was talking to my wife, Ellen, and I told her, I said, like, if this don't go right, Wes won't ever know who I am.
yeah.
He'll never know me.
Well, I can remember having a conversation with somebody one day, and they said, are you sure you want to do this? I said, all I can look at is a young dad standing over there with a 1-year-old child that deserves a chance to be that child's daddy the rest of his life. So, yes, I can stand a chance to do. You know what I mean? Like, that was just the thoughts that was going through my head. Like, even though I got young kids myself, but I couldn't get past, like, I have to at least try. And, like, that's what we're supposed to do as Christians. And I'm not saying that because because we're nothing without God.
Right.
I couldn't have been anything in this without God.
Right.
And I believe that's why God started preparing us before.
Right. And maybe had you not,
Sure.
maybe somebody else would have.
That's
And
right.
So I'm not saying that it's
Yeah, sure.
because God makes a way, and if it was going to
Absolutely.
happen, He's going to make it happen.
Oh,
But
it
I'm
was-
so glad.
It was a faith thing for us all, I believe. I mean,
Yes.
like, it was testing every one of us.
Oh, absolutely. It tested me
Obedience.
to the limit. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So we get to tent revival, and we're going through. We're in Potts Camp, down there in town. Cold night.
Yeah.
Into the service. Brother.
Robin Johnson.
No, before Brother Robin Johnson. This was
Brother Miller.
This is Brother Miller, and I misspoke. This is before we went. This was a service we were here
Okay.
because he stayed a long
Yeah,
time.
brother Philip Miller.
We did
That's
tent
right.
revival.
That's
but we
right.
also did. He stayed for a while. We had a service here, but Brother Robin does come in on this later because we had 2 tent revivals, 22 and 23, I think. And so, Brother Miller is talking about healing and all these things, and so I of course go up and get prayer, and he prophesied to me, and was saying that I was being tested, and was going through something, but was going to come out on the other side.
Right.
Kind of like that, to that. And of course I claim it, take it.
Sure.
Fast forward, that's around that time is when you tested, you get approved, and you are my match. Okay. Then 2023 rolls around, and because my kidney was still stable, it was fine. It's declining, but it's stable. We have tent revival again. So now we're a year in.
Right.
And this is Brother Robin Johnson, and we're down there in the.
But up until this point, like it's a game of cat and mouse. Like the phone could ring at any minute.
Yes.
Hey, we need you here.
Absolutely.
I mean, and even on my end,
yes.
yeah, on my end, like I was expecting a phone call any day.
Exactly, because I'm on the list,
Yeah.
and if I get a donor, I'll go with them.
Right.
Because if I don't have to use yours, I won't. I'll use a donor, right? But yeah, you're right. It was still stressful knowing I had known when I found out that I had someone close like you. It took a lot of stress off, but you're right. There was still that I could be at work, I could be asleep, and you only have this much time to get there.
Yeah, and they would call me every so often just to check in, and like every time I would see that Alabama number, and I'd pick up, hey, this is such from UAB. I'd be like, yeah, my heart would race.
Yeah, mine too.
And fear would try to creep in, but you know, it's just
yes,
tactics of the devil always, of course. But
yes,
it was good. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. So Brother Robin's out there, and he says, you know, at the end of the service, and this was, I don't remember what night, maybe night 2. I know it was the night after. It was the night after Brother Travis got his healing, and so of course I'm in tune. Then when I see things like that, it just makes you
faith.
When you need a healing, you start gravitating, right?
Sure.
And he gets up and specifically says, "I see 2 or 3 people that have kidney issues."
Yeah.
And well, I'm already heading that way. I'm already, like, my wife's turning to say,
before he got the K out of his mouth.
I'm going, like I'm up. Because I'm going. I'm going to answer the call.
Claiming it.
Yes, I'm claiming it. So I'm up there, and so get prayed for. Move of God happens, and then we go into the end of the year. We have, you know, NYC. We have Christmas.
Right.
All that, and then here we are, me and you, 2024. And we're planning the kidney transplant.
Right.
Okay. So I'm talking to you probably early January 2024.
We're trying to get a date set.
My daughter's about to be born.
That's right.
And I'm trying to, because we can plan it at this point. We've decided my function had gotten so low.
Right.
It was time, basically. And we're talking, because we spoke, I know, at the Christmas dinner.
We did.
And then we spoke 1st of January, and we wanted to do spring break.
Yep.
I felt like my wife had been recovered from having Rosie by then.
Yep.
It was just going to be the best time.
It worked out for us because with Kenyon working at the school, she would have been off that week, you know, to be because we both had to go to Alabama to do it.
Yes.
So that was a lot of
you had been out for a week. I was been out for a month. So yes, exactly. So we're planning. It's planned. I mean, we all but called UAB and have it scheduled at that point.
Yep.
And I have my 90-day checkup with my nephrologist. This is the one that 2 years earlier looked at me and said, "Well, we need to plan your transplant. You're going to have a transplant."
Yeah.
Late January, I go in there, run my numbers, and she comes back out and she goes, "Do you feel any different?" And I'm like, "No, feel about the same." And she said, and she pulls out the paper, she starts looking at it. She said, "Well, all your numbers are good, and when we last met 90 days ago, you know, you were at 17-18%. We're about to need to do a transplant, but now you're at 24." And this was the highest in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't even listen to anything else she said.
It was over with. You knew what was up.
I was over here like I was healed. I was telling her, that was God. I was like, I was healing. And she was like, "Well, you're at 24, and I just don't see any reason for you to have a transplant anytime soon."
Right. That's awesome.
And all I could think about is I cannot wait to tell Craig. I cannot wait, because we were.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just stressful.
It was, but
I also know you've been praying.
Sure.
I've of course been praying. And so that was early 2024. And I have a chart. I'm going to try to send Zach, but it shows my trend. And if you watch the trend in 2023, my numbers are just declined down all year long. That's why we're thinking it's coming. And then 2024 shoots back up higher than it's ever been.
Right.
And then I have all of 2024 up until now, and it stayed the same.
It's awesome. That's God.
That
is God.
It's been amazing. It really has. And so, you know, I wanted to come on, and when you invited me on here, of course, I told you got to make me do things because I won't do anything.
Sure.
But I know I'm hoping that just this will kind of encourage somebody.
Right.
Build up faith.
Mm-hmm.
I know it will encourage me, and maybe I'll need it again in the future.
Yeah.
Because I think back to that first night when the doctor said, back in 2003, had you not come in 2 nights ago, you wouldn't have made it.
Right.
And sometimes I can think about that, and that is enough to encourage.
Sure.
Because there was a reason, there's a purpose. But if you don't think about those things, then sometimes it's easy to lose. It's kind of like the children of Israel. They were constantly going back and forth.
Yep.
They would see all these miracles and see these things, but then time would go and you forget them or you discount them. And so if this isn't for anybody else, it may be for me 10 years from now.
Hey, it's definitely for me, and I know there's going to be so many people that are impacted by this because, you know, people are dealing with stuff, and they need to know how to deal with stuff. They need to know that there is a God.
Yes.
That is there waiting for them to pick them up and carry them through the situation that they're going through. You know, no matter what that may look like, no matter what the outcome of that may be, He is still there to pick us up and to see us through.
Yep.
It's so amazing. So amazing. I mean, it's so much stuff happened through this for so many different people. Mm-hmm. You know, even the nurses, the doctors, you know, because when I was at UAB, you know, of course, they're looking at my life history and they're seeing that, you know, I was once an abuser of drugs and, you know, so they're testing me for that. You know, I'm being brutally honest about my past, you know, to them. So that raises red flags, of course, to where there's more conversation goes on with doctors and stuff. And it's just, they were impacted by it too, that not only, you know, was God working through your life, but He was also working through my life and their lives as well, because they were touched by it. Because like the time, like I go back to the timeline, you know, like I'd only been clean for the right amount of days. Like it was just down to the hour that God knew hey, I had to do this then because I needed you to do this now.
Yep.
And here we are, you know, 2-3 years later now, and we're sitting here on the morning show and we're talking about it. And, you know, hey, we didn't even have to go through with the transplant.
And I thought we'd be having this conversation after a transplant.
I did too.
I never thought we wouldn't.
In fact, we had the conversation, you know, that, hey, this is going to be, you're going to go on the road testifying about this, you know, all of this stuff. And
I always told my wife if we ever go get my numbers checked and I miraculously have a second kidney, I'll quit my job and travel. She said, be careful what you tell.
Yeah, be careful what you say. I guarantee you.
I'm that serious now.
Yeah, it's so awesome, though, to just see what God is capable of. You know, like I said when we started, we hear it, we see it happen for other people, but when it happens for us, it's just like, oh boy, this is not just a fairy tale. It's not, you know what I mean?
It's real.
Because let's be honest, at times when we hear stuff that God has done for other people, we're like, you think that really happened? You know, but it does. It really does.
It really happens.
It really happens.
And the last thing I'll say that doors open for me with this just in conversations. So like in my career, I work in human resources. So I get to interact with a lot of people in a lot of different walks of life, and from all over the world, because they travel into it's a global company I work for, and I've been there for 5 years now, and I have several instances where people have opened up to me at work about their health issues or their struggles that they're going through because when I went public about it. And for one example, a lady I've known for a while didn't know anything about her as far as her personal life. she had childhood brain cancer, had a tumor,
Wow.
and she had it removed. And recently it had come back.
Yeah.
And I was the only person she told.
Wow.
And she was telling me just because she wanted me to pray for her and pray with her.
Ain't that something?
And that would have never opened up. I would have
Right.
never, you wouldn't have that
Exactly.
conversation.
Exactly.
But hearing her story, she probably felt like she was getting something from me.
Mm-hmm.
But I got a lot more from her story
Right.
to help me through what I was going through.
Right.
It kind of made me think back to when I was in the hospital for that week when I was younger. There were tons and tons of children in that hospital that I interacted with that their situation just always seemed worse, and it may not be, but to me, I was like, if they can make it, I can make it. So there's levels to it.
Absolutely.
But that was something else, that opening the doors to conversations with people, to witness, but also to build each other's faith.
Absolutely.
Has been huge for me.
Yeah. You know, the things that we go through in life is never for just us. It's God entrusting in us to be able to carry it to somebody else that's dealing with a situation that don't have what you and I have.
That's right.
You know, I couldn't imagine going through life without having the help of the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? We started out talking about not having a church family and stuff, but you know, we're both sitting here. We both have the Holy Ghost. Can you imagine what this would be like? Going through life like this, you know, through situations of infirmity or just whatever, and not having the power of the Holy Ghost or anybody around you that has the Holy Ghost to speak life into you. Mm-hmm. Because that's exactly what has happened right here. Preachers have walked in here, prophesied over your situation. They've spoke life to your situation, and God has healed your situation.
Yes.
You know, I mean, and it's been a process. It was a process that he put you through to get you to where you needed to see that you needed the healing.
Yes.
And then he's put you through a process of healing through it all. And man, it's just, I don't know.
You said that, you know, it's typically about others, not about ourselves.
That's right.
And in that verse, you know, all things work to the good of those. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say to the good of you. It says to the good of those.
That's
all about others.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of like this what we're doing here. And anything I ever try to do, I have to try to make sure that I get myself out of the way.
Sure.
Because it doesn't always need to be about me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want this to be about me at all.
Right.
Because there was nothing I could have done.
It was like pulling teeth to get him to do this. I promise you, it's not about you, bro. Nobody thinks that. So, I'm just glad I'm glad you come on. I'm glad you joined me to talk about it. It's you know, I'm sitting here thinking about that story that you was just telling about the lady at work with the brain cancer.
Yeah.
This whole situation was probably for her more so than it was for us.
It absolutely could.
Just to build your faith and to give you the story to be able to relate to her.
Yeah, man. I feel like I could keep going. Like, it reminds me of like the one with the issue of blood.
That's right.
When she's healed with the issue of blood, Jesus is en route to heal the man's daughter that's dead. And he has to see her be healed before his miracle comes.
That's right.
And so seeing that built his faith before everyone in the room.
Absolutely.
That's what that reminds me of when you say that.
God knew that the dad's faith had to be built before it could be fulfilled.
Because then when he gets to the room and he says, Jesus has everybody leave except the certain people that had the faith.
That's right. That's right. Ain't that something?
Mm. Yeah.
He's a good God. He sure is. Well, brother, I have really enjoyed this, and I know there's so much more conversation that we could just sit here and just go on and on and on about. It is, and I know there's going to be so many people impacted by this. I just want to personally thank you. Thank you for joining me today, of course, but just for being my friend, bro. Thank you for sharing your testimony with me, letting me be a part of it, because it's I can't tell you what it done for me to know that that I was able to be there and to be that vessel that of help in a time of need. And because I feel you would do the same for me. I feel, and I know there's a lot of other people that would as well. And that's just part of being a church family. That's part of being a church is helping each other. You want to say something else before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just hope this helps somebody. I pray it reaches somebody that needs it, and it brings you closer to God, builds your faith, like it did mine.
Yep. So awesome. Well, we love you all. On behalf of the morning show, we will see you at church this morning at 10 a.m. We love you, and we can't wait to see you there.